Who don't know me, and I'm old enough to been around before some of you were born. Give a quick background. I spent 10 years in the Navy working electronics, and then 30 plus years in the cybersecurity, running a cybersecurity company. And 2.5 years with CompTIA, working on cybersecurity and GenAI, or AI security. So this is a subject near and dear to my heart. This slide deck, somehow I'll figure out what I'm doing. Nope. I hate technology. I especially hate slide decks. I'm a big fan of titled questions. 2 slides. This slide deck, though, is in the app. In this session, you can download the PDF. So I'm going to move through here. I want questions. What we're looking at is, and what I found is that when people talk about AI, specifically GenAI, nobody knows what they're talking about. Nobody can define this. This thing popped up, 2.5 years ago, and lit the world on fire. Problem is, it's an experiment. They unleashed an experiment on the world. Just like the internet, just like all the technology we've used, it's an experiment. And with that experiment, we ran into some things. One of the things we wanted to look at here is kind of an overview and understanding of what GenAI is specifically. And in that subset, large language models, which is what we see chatbots, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. All of these things are chatbots using an open or a large language model. So we have a better understanding of things because they're different. It's a data set, but it's not a database like we're used to. In a database, you can go in and pull stuff out. These you can't. You feed it in, it's there. So I want to talk about that, talk about some ways to secure it, to approach it, and then also how you can start looking at a roadmap to incorporate this into your business and then into your customers. Now, first question, how many people are using something GenAI related? How many people have a policy? How many people are implementing a policy? There's good hands out there. There's a lot of hands that's like, hey, how many people have customers that have turned this on? That's the scary part. So let's get into this thing and kind of roll through here. Let's see here. I said I hate slides. There we go. For anybody that is not aware, GenAI or large language models are compilation of text, specifically large language. But in GenAI, you also have compilations of images, you've got compilations of audio and video. And GenAI it's creating something. You ask it a question, and it responds with something, a picture, a video, an application, just some garbled text, a hallucination. All of these things exist out there. And it's really powerful. There's some really amazing things that can be done with GenAI. Imagine if you're blind and you've got an app on your phone and you can run it around and say, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's in this room. Tell me what's on that piece of paper. You're deaf. And it can give you a live, closed caption of everything in front of you. Those are powerful things. But at the same time, I can, like was said day before or yesterday, you can create a live video deep fake of somebody. A couple of minutes of video. How many people here posted any video on any social media, YouTube, podcast, anything? We can make copies of you, whether you like it or not. That's the scary thing. I got a squeaky towel. But what these things do is they're responsive. They're predictive machines. It's going to generate something based on your input. So a large language model takes the question you have, breaks it down into tokens, into little bite-sized pieces, feeds it in, and as you're typing, it's actually predicting what the next possible outcomes will be. Not necessarily right, but it predicts it. But they're really cool. They can be used to do things like draft text, KB entries, create code, summarize meetings and documents. You're on Zoom, you're in Teams, you can get summarizations of the video of that session without having to have a transcriber or a court reporter sitting there. You know? And it's instantaneous. You can prioritize, take draft copies, answer facts, chat bots. All of these things are really cool and exciting, but if done wrong, can cost you or your customer a lot. I think they mentioned the other day, yesterday, about the guy at Samsung who put code in asking a question. That code's in OpenAI. It will never be removed from OpenAI. You can't do that. So you have to be careful when you're asking for things. A good example of a use of chatbots or GenAI interfaces, ticket systems. I don't respond well with emails and tickets. I get very technical. I get in the weeds. I've got mild dyslexia, so sometimes I leave sentences out, which changed the tone completely. So listening to the last session helps me a little bit. But it's one of these things that I want, and we want as an industry, we want all this knowledge of exactly what was done, what was registered, where the entry was flipped, what was deleted, what was removed, what was added. We need all of that information in our KBs so that our techs can go back and search that. But the person who sent us an email message, sent that ticket, is a mid-level manager who has no idea, thinks we speak a foreign language. You can take that text, shove it into a large language model and say, rewrite this, 3 bullets for someone with no technical knowledge, and it'll do it. You have to be careful. You don't do that on OpenAI because you just put your KB and all that information in there. But if you have a private, controlled environment large language model that you can use, you all of a sudden have something that goes to your customer that they can read and go, oh, that makes sense. And they're nice. Believe me, it works. See, like I said, I hate these things. I'm going to get too forward. There we go. Now I got to move back and forth sweets. One thing they do is, like I mentioned, they're prediction machines. There's no fact. It's what it has learned based on the text it has assimilated. When OpenAI started, they had to get data. They trained this on the internet. They had to get data. They went to web crawling companies. They got massive troves of data. Everything scraped off of every web page. They then had to say, okay, here's all the porn, we got to take that out. Here's the illegal content, got to take that out. Here's licensed content, got to make sure that it did. They miss stuff all the time. They missed a lot. So I can go to OpenAI and say, write me a lullaby in the style of Stephen King. It'll do it. So there were things that were put into it, and it has the ability to really do neat things based on a prompt. But if you don't prompt it correctly and give it parameters and guidelines, it'll make stuff up. It's like an arrogant teenager that occasionally uses drugs. It will come back so forcefully. This is the answer. We heard yesterday the number of lawyers. We had something, I think it was the Health and Human Services, put out a report recently. This is a report from the government on various important things. They used research papers, and it was wrong. Bad stuff, messed up. You can tell this was written using a GenAI and LLMs. So you have to check this. You have to keep track of these things. Let's see, I gotta get through this mess. This is just ridiculous. We talked a little bit about how, all this data that goes into it, the images that go into it, the audio that goes into it. All of these things exist and build this data set. And it's always learning. It's always coming up with new stuff. There's a pre-training, the fine-tune training. ChatGPT is not particularly fine-tuned. Large language models and generic large language models are not particularly fine-tuned. If you have using large language models and you fine-tune them on specific content, say in industry, healthcare, you tune it on medical terminology and structures of insurance forms and things like that. It can be in finance, whatever focused areas you want, you can fine tune them. There are models out there that you can run, that you can download and run, that are tuned to be better coding models. There's a generic, and then there's a specific coding that you can get. So there's models out there tuned for this, and that's one thing you want to make sure of whenever you're doing anything with a large language model is which one are you using, how is it tuned. You want to understand if you're going to use it in your business, what's it tuned for, right? You can do models as a service, like OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, things like that, through web interfaces, through APIs. You can run models locally. It doesn't take a huge amount. I've got one of the new Mac Minis, and I'm running Obama, which is an open source model from Meta. I've also got 2 or 3 other models on there that are running. It's not lightning fast, but it's fast enough to do what I want, and it can search. I can feed it my documents and ask questions, and it's not going out to to feed OpenAI. These things will be death. One of the issues that exists out there today, though, is, and I mentioned a little bit about this, is that there are these guys, they scrape everywhere, right? And this gets into how these things are built and what it looks like. They're scraped from everywhere, and they ingest this. It's not like a traditional database where it comes in and there's tables and rows. I can't go into a large language model and delete all the social security numbers. I can't delete all the email addresses. I can't delete all the private information in there. I can't delete copyrighted information. I can't delete information that is proprietary because it's numerical relationships. This word has these relationships. It's math. So if you have a large language model that, say today that somebody won a lawsuit against Google or OpenAI or Claude or one of the model organizations that said you have to remove all of this. And a court, the highest court said you have to do it. They have to go back to when it started, when it was loaded. Delete backwards all the models. So we're on 04 now. If it was put in 02, delete 4, delete 3, delete 2, delete it from the original training data, retrain, and then release. Guess what you lose? All the knowledge is learned from '02 to '04. Gone. Remember, experiment. Some of these guys don't know how these things do this. They don't understand how it actually works. But we want to build businesses on it. Let's get through. Like I said, you get all this stuff. This is what I like. What could go wrong? Everything. There are bad guys and you can get access to this. It's really easy. There are bad guys that are using large language models and coding models and GenAI models to do deep fakes, clones. It used to be the business email compromise, send it to finance. Years ago, there was a guy that, I think it was Hong Kong, was on a video call. The coworkers were fake, and he wired the money. It looked real. They could respond to his questions. Remember, they can do this stuff in real time. There are things that are like data poisoning. So you had an image GenAI platform, like Dolly, trained on millions and millions of images. These things are all categorized and tagged when they're trained. 100,000 images of a cat was set, tagged as a cat. If I can figure out a way to load 50,000 images of a dog, but say it's a cat, you're getting that dog sometimes. That's a poison. You can do it with text. You can poison these systems and their relationships. Prompt injections are a big one. We learned as an industry how to fix bad programming. Hasn't fixed the developers yet, but we understand there are going to be vulnerabilities in systems. We understand what SQL injections are and cross-site scripting and things like that. We understand that. We built tools, proxies, web application firewalls. We can unencrypt, inspect, remove, block, pass on good traffic. Large language models, especially GenAI models, everything, all the input is valid because it has to check everything. If I send a picture to an image model, it has to read every pixel. I can put code in a pixel. We know this from years ago. You could put code in a malware in a pixel, and the library in Chrome would execute it. You can do this. You can poison models. You can tell them to ignore their responses. You can go to OpenAI and say, or ChatGPT and say, how can I build a bomb? And it'll say, I can't tell you. There's a little auditor or a little checker sitting there saying, don't do these things. Don't be racist. Don't tell people how to kill or blow things up. But I can upload a picture of a guy building a bomb and say, give me a detailed description. It'll do it. There's all kinds of ways that these things can be attacked and manipulated. They pull copyrighted data so you don't know what's inside of a large language model. If you're using a product and it's a multi-tenant or a large, it's backed by a large model, and you think it's private, and you're putting information in it. Say a ticket system. You've got the vendor's layer that sees everything. You've got your layer that sees everything. You got the person who put the ticket in who sees all their tickets, and then you have the customers who should see only their tickets. Well, what if this thing has sucked in all the information and you put a chat bot up and somebody, one of your customers goes on and asks a question and gets their competitor, who's also your customer, gets that information back. These are things we have to start asking, or should be asking all the time. Let's see here, get through this stuff. Jeez, I hate slides. Well, The phishing emails, I like that one. Emails, near and dear to my heart. 60-year-old experiment, by the way. You used to be able to tell people, don't, look for bad stuff, poor grammar, wonky images. Not anymore, and I can produce billions. And they do. They've already upgraded, so it's kind of novel when you get the Nigerian prints, poor spelling. It's like, come on, guys. You almost want to give them a little bit of money so they can up their game. But you can create things. So there are bad actors out there who are asking these models for coding help. And if you don't put the controls and tell it if it doesn't exist or you don't know, don't tell me. It will tell you to go download these modules and repos off of GitHub. Well, they may not exist. Those packages might not exist. So the bad actors go out there, create a package, code the function so it works, but also slide a backdoor in there and you download it. Or somebody in your organization or one of your clients download something. The word no code application development is a scary, scary term. But these things, they exist out there. Let's get into talk about some of the ways we can secure these things. Make sure I'm keeping you from lunch. So take AI out. We know as a group, as an industry, you should have computer usage policies, security policies, frameworks in place. We need file system rights, we need user rights, we need permissions, we need all these things. Does everybody do that? Do all your employees follow that? I know you can tell your customers, this is what you should do. How many of them actually follow that? Especially when you get into small businesses, they're like, no, just make it work, right? Now, AI comes in. We've been using AI for a long time. If you've ever had an email caught in a spam filter, there's a Bayesian machine learning algorithm created back in the 60s that's responsible for that. We've been using this thing forever, but now with GenAI, with things like agents and stuff, it can interact with data in ways that we never thought possible, or that took forever to implement. It's an application. We understand what applications are. We should have policies on how these things work. You should understand every application, functionally, foundationally, what the applications that you use are, and that your customers use. If you're responsible for them, I don't want to just sell anything. I want to know that what I'm selling is not made, it's not a Russian product sitting there sucking data off of their servers. I want to know that it's a legitimate product. And same thing with this, except this is magic. And that's the problem, is people see this and they're caught up in this hype, and it's magic. It does these wonderful things. I was at RSA 2 years ago, and right after OpenAI released ChatGPT, everybody plastered AI. There were like the neon poster board signs with magic markers, AI included. And then go up and ask, what are you doing? What model? What system? I don't know. It's magic, and everybody wants to be on board, and everybody wants to fund it, and everybody wants to do all of these things. And you don't need to be caught up in it. You understand it's there, and implement it where it makes sense, securely and smartly. But if you get in that space space of let's just pop it out, you have no idea what you unleashed. It could tear your customers down. It could shut your company down because you leaked something or you did something bad. You know, if a small business is hit, a lot of small businesses, they're tech companies. It doesn't take much to kill somebody. And unfortunately, without taking the exact same steps that we would do for securing any new application, any new technology, when people move to the cloud's just somebody else's computer. All the same rules apply. Whether it sits in your office, the customer's office, a data center in Azure, all the same rules apply. Same rules apply here. Permissions, accesses, turn on Copilot. Or if your customer said, man, I want this, and flip the switch. Everything it had ingested, all your Teams conversations, all your emails, all your Zooms, all your files, your SharePoint, HR, ERP, payroll, everything. Without permissions, anybody can go and ask the right question and extract that data out. So these are things you have to be aware of. Understanding how something, the AI enablement of a piece of technology that you're using affects you. Go through the processes and check and build a plan and put the policies in place. There are things that you can do internally, privately. There are things that you can do with public models. By subscription, you can control who has access to it, logs on, and you can see what their queries are, and you can audit and go back and do things. You can say, this is private only, don't learn from it. But you have to take, and especially business owners, you know, it's your name, it's your business. Take that responsibility, make sure that everybody knows. If they see something, if you got an employee who sees something new and cool and it can be really valuable, delve deep into it. If your vendor goes in and says, hey, we're going to turn on this chatbot feature, you say, wait, first no, and then where'd the data come from? What's the structure? What's the privacy? Who has access to this? What happens if this? You want to know these things. What's your response if this happens? And because a lot of these things are web enabled, they're cloud-based apps. It looks cool, but you don't know that there are 3 other third parties underneath that doing API accesses for an agent talking to something else. You want to know all of this. You want to know who in that application chain, who in that application or product, and asking the exact same questions. Because if you turn it on and it's wrong, you're at risk. It's your fault, not theirs. Everybody has to use my software, it's not my fault. So you've got to pay attention to these things. Another one is, we've heard about cyber insurance for a number of years now. Ask your insurance broker. If I enable something, if I enable this, what does that do? What additional exposure? Do I need more insurance? Do I need a special rider or a clause because I've done something like this? Last thing you want to have happen is an event occurred and you think you're getting covered by your insurance company and they're like, yeah, not so much. And it happens. You know, they a lot of times they'll tell you best practices. Yes, Josh?
Do you know for a fact that there is a line of insurance that does accidental release of data like this?
No.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that for years there wasn't cyber insurance, and it was error and omission, general liability. Now they came out with cyber. This is going to be a thing. So ask your brokers. Ask them, how are you going to respond to it? Is it a general application? Is it covered under my cyber? Is it covered under this? Yes or no? Because if you don't know and it happens, you could suffer. Yeah.
How do you approach what Microsoft is doing with Copilot and Google's doing with GenAI? They're just turning it off. It's everywhere you go. You're dealing with it. And how do you think about doing, or dealing with that?
Honestly, I'm telling people that if somebody says that we're just turning these things on, you need to have a policy, a position on this, an understanding of what it is, and then if it's turned on, what the risks are. And then communicate that to your customers, but also in turn, if they're just turning it on, you don't want it on yet, make sure it's off. Yes.
The one thing I would add to that is Copilot, the internal actual paid version. Microsoft does have a formal implementation strategy, which includes the steps necessary to make sure the guardrails from a security standpoint, depending on how deep you want to go.
And the overhead on that is something you're going to deal with your clients. If they're turning it on, you have to say, hey, you have to make sure your data's that correctly and labels and all that stuff.
And this is one of those where you have to have that conversation where you're setting up the expectations and both the vulnerabilities and the resources necessary to manage them.
And that's part of it, is that the policies and frameworks that you have to secure your organization now, the trust mark, things like that, that's important. You understand these are opportunities for you to get service revenue and consulting revenue for customers, but you need to understand it, not something you learn on the back end. Yes?
I'll add to that too. I say that we've done some stuff with this, and it's actually helped us sell more security. People are like, we were going to work with a chatbot with somebody.
Okay. Holy crap. Yeah, it's actually helped us sell cybersecurity because, like, we were meeting with a prospect, and about the third meeting, he went, "Holy crap! Like, we're going to have to fix all this underlying stuff." Where if you went in and said, "Hey, you got to fix all your SharePoint permissions and your, Active Directory intra ID stuff's all jacked up, and your groups are wrong, your permissions wrong, and all that," they don't care. But now this executive is actually going through and fixing that crap because to get to what he wants to do with this nice AI thing, he's not paying us to do that finally. So if you pitch it right and follow what he said, Microsoft's like guardrails, the Microsoft, and a lot of it's general security. If you've got their intra ID under control, and you've got SharePoint permissions set up right, you've got maybe a separate SharePoint that you're feeding in certain things into Copilot, like stuff you should be doing already, but most people aren't, is the problem.
Right, it's hard to go back into or step into any environment that has history and fix it. That's painful. It's expensive. If you get customers that come in and say, "I'm a brand new startup, I need X," that's easy from the start. One thing that caught my eye today, when you talk about things like vendor due diligence, plugins, what happens, how things work. There was just a manning the plugin vulnerability discovered by malicious plugins that can get into and read and extract data from your Gemini, Claude, OpenAI chats in your browser, in Chrome. How many people have Chrome locked down where nobody can get a plugin or an extension turned on? It doesn't need anything. It runs at such a high level that it has full access to that information. These things are happening all the time. So, let's see. You want to, when you're talking to your vendors, every vendor that says LL or says AI, you start asking questions. Is it an LLM? What training, what validation, what maintenance, what security, what access controls, plugins, failover, DR, legal compliance? We don't know what the compliance rules are going to be. We thought we had an idea, and that was just chucked. So the executive order that just came out basically said, free for all. Go forth and consume the world. Now, if you're doing work in the EU, they have frameworks. Other countries have frameworks. and guidelines. So, understand these things need to be there. These things can be biased. Even some simple machine learning, or what we consider an older form of AI, like machine learning, highly biased. And you need to know, Tesla, when they first came out with their the autonomous driving, there's cameras in front, looking at what's in front. Who do they train it on? What are the things that they would recognize as people? It's who they knew. They trained it on themselves. I think I'm safe standing in front of a Waymo, but somebody else, maybe not so much, because they trained it and didn't have a full understanding of what a person looks like. These things exist out there. There were issues when some of the large language models and the ChatGPT and all this, the AI buzz hit last year, that there were, we found out, the industry found out, that data scientists who typically don't work with IT were being hired by marketing and sales and manufacturing and operations to solve problems. They were given data sets, huge data sets from organizations, and say, I want to extract this from it. So they would run out to Hugging Face, it's a big repository of AI models, and they would find one they think works, and they'll download it like the code, pull some modules in, and run some tests. Ooh, that looks good, I think it works. Production. That could be production inside, but it's being hosted on Amazon. All the instructions and everything about it was kept in a Jupyter notebook, which is posted on another site, not encrypted, full passwords, API keys, all that stuff. And when they're done with their scenarios, turn it off. Don't remove it. They didn't understand the policy, because they never talked to InfoSec, they never talked to IT, they never thought to remove these things or put them in controlled environments. And they found thousands upon thousands of instances of corporate data from pharmaceutical companies, financial companies, healthcare, all the stuff just sitting out on the internet. It was being done by data scientists for marketing, or data scientists for sales, that nobody knew about. So you need to ask, you need to be aware that could be in a company that you're doing business with, that same scenario. These are standard things. Just like I said, we should be doing this. API access, controls, rights, all of these things should be the norm for anything we put into our own environments or our customers' environments. Audit trails, logging. You want to know what happened? Make sure you check and ask them and insist that these things are enabled. You want to know. Because if you don't, all the things we tell our customers to do, you better be doing in-house. But that's what's going to save us. This stuff is going to break. Software breaks. People write software. People make configuration errors. Every event that's ever happened, cyber wars, is because of a person. Policies and procedures and frameworks and controls are the only way we'd stop that. So, I know it's an impossible, you can't get people to do things, but that's something we've got to look at. So, you want to look at things like your risk mitigation. Yes.
When you set policies, you're only minimizing the risk.
Right.
The risk is still there. You don't eliminate the risk.
Correct. It's your risk tolerance. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of companies, anybody that's ever dealt with a large enterprise and told them, you have to upgrade this now. And they're like, what's the legal risk? Downtime, whatever, I can, $10 million, okay. Nope, we're not gonna do it. You know, it happens on a day-to-day basis. Smaller business though, typically don't have that capability, don't have that luxury. It's always about the risk to what you're doing. And that's something you should look at every single day in your own business. If you're looking at implementing stuff, make sure you've gone through these steps. Make sure you've done your assessments and audits. You've got your policies and your frameworks in place. Test and try these things internally. Setting up, Copilot sounds easy. Flip the switch. It's not. It's intensive. Take the time to do it. If you've learned to do it internally, then when you go out, you know what to expect when you go to your customers, and that's a billable cycle. That's revenue coming into you. Advise them, give them policy, write policies for them, help them implement, help them test when they want to bring in an application for an AI enablement of their core line of business application, because everybody's doing it. Yes.
The one add-on to that I would strongly recommend work on the tail of doing is treat yourself like a client. Formally implement, drop it away, Copilot or the like, with the full security review, all of that kind of fun stuff. Don't take shortcuts because you know your stuff is okay. And that's what I had to say. Thank you.
It's the smart thing to do. When I ran our cybersecurity business, I would not use technology from a vendor that I didn't fully understand, that I didn't know that I could remove as much risk as possible. Get it to a point where I was accepting of that risk. It wasn't based on which one gave you the better price. It wasn't based on which one was the newest and shiniest, or took me to the coolest place on vacation. It was, does this make sense for my business? And we would go through these processes internally. You've got to do this as a business for yourself, to protect yourself. So, yes.
So this all looks great. There's a huge opportunity. How many roles would you suggest, and if you could name the roles to deploy? So, we have the policy writing person and technical people. Like, what are the roles from an implement, and what are the roles from an operate, from an ongoing maintenance perspective for this as well?
Two things. All the existing roles you have for policies and implementations, your engineers, all of these things exist. AI is a technology that's added on to anything right now. It's not a standalone wizard. It's something that if you're writing policies today, you've got somebody doing compliance and risk, this is a module that they'll need. Right now, there aren't very many fully defined roles, job roles, like from a federal level or an international level of what AI roles are. You may hear machine learning engineers or an AI data scientist. Or, occasionally you hear somebody on an AI red team. Well, AI red teaming member is your red teaming group that needs to understand how to attack and approach and secure red or AI products. It's software. It's a service. It's the same thing we do every day. There's some new techniques, but it's the same jobs we have. We just need to start providing more skills, make sure that everybody in your organization understands the fundamentals of what this stuff is and adds the techniques and tools, because they're going to use it. And the guys that are sitting there in network, the net admins are going to start using this stuff. The sysadmins, how many people write a PowerShell script every day? Well, I can go into Copilot on Microsoft side and I can get PowerShell to do whatever I need to. So it's there to improve and optimize efficiencies. But it's the same, right now it's the same roles. Nobody's really put new titles on them yet. And that's going to be kind of fluid.
But it's a different skill set per se. It's a similar functional role, like, network security guy or architect, what have you. So you need an AI architect, because those roles are different than what currently exists. So it's a new skilling, it's a new financial threshold, and it's a new certification per se.
True, if you're creating AI models, if you're creating AI platforms, you'll have those. But necessarily for an MSP, you wouldn't necessarily see that role. And honestly, we write our own titles because they sound cool. Come on, threat hunter. Threat hunters. That's because technician wasn't cool. So, okay, I don't want to keep you guys from lunch because.
Yeah, lunch in the vendor fair, y'all enjoy it. Thank you so much.
The slide deck, and feel free to reach out anytime.